Okay, today's guest is Lily Nova, an astrophotographer, ET contactee, CE5 practitioner, which is human initiated contact with UFOs, ETs, and cosmic channeler. UFOs began visiting her during COVID while she was out shooting astrophotography. She began documenting those close encounters with her camera, accumulating evidence and investigating the phenomena. She is dedicated to sharing her findings and experience with the world and to help others initiate contact and connect with enlightened star beings. So let's welcome today's guest, Lily Nova.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, yes. As I mentioned a little bit before, I've always had an interest in what lies beyond the present moment and our own present environment. And for me to look a little bit beyond um, what exists out into the universe and to speak with interesting people who also have this desire to know what's going on, beyond our own cosmos itself. So you've had some interesting experiences. First off, you do astrophotography, which is a very interesting hobby or profession that you undertake. Maybe you could just give us a little bit of a background and how you got into astrophotography. First off.
Yeah, sure. So I've always been an artist. I liked taking photos, but I didn't really dig into astrophotography until COVID hit. And we're in the middle of lockdown. There's not much, to do. And my escape was to the stars. I discovered that I could take photos of the Milky Way, and I just became obsessed and dug into it full force. So I have a Nikon D5300 DSLR camera, and you just need the camera, a tripod. There are a few other additions that you can. Astrophotography can get pretty expensive really
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
There's a lot of different add-ons and things you can do, telescopes, things like that. But yeah, I dug into it full force and just fell in love with it. And I was out there every night stargazing and taking pictures and learning this amazing, addicting, hobby slash passion slash profession.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because photography itself is like a personal experience where you interact with the environment one on one, and whatever, not intuition, but more the peace of mind and the connection that you have, not only with the camera but whatever's projecting outward, comes back to you in a way that creates a connection. I know that for myself, for doing landscape photography, just capturing a moment in time of a beautiful scene and taking it back with me and being able to hold on to that moment. And while the universe is constantly changing in terms of when you take photos of the cosmos, in terms of the movements of the planets and of the stars, you're actually obviously capturing a moment in time as well of our own journey. And astrophotography, I've tried it. I've become a little frustrated because maybe the lenses I used. I mean, I had the proper camera, but the patience to be able to sit there and work and be able to, like, as again, not judge the work and to just go along with the whole flow and process of it. And be it that you did it during COVID, many other people did other types of things in terms of going inward and focusing in on their life and having actually turning the camera within on themselves. If a person did that.
Yeah, certainly. The whole astrophotography thing, it became much more than it was very much an inner journey as well. And while you're out under the stars and you're in that, just mesmerized, amazed by the beauty of something just so grand and beautiful, it's very poetic. And you spend a lot of time with yourself, and you're in nature, and it just opens up so many other doors. And it was definitely a very much an inner journey as well. And I know what you mean about astrophotography can get frustrating because you can spend all night just to get one photograph, because you have to take so many pictures, and a lot of time the equipment doesn't work. So it can definitely get frustrating sometimes, as you're learning it. But it's definitely an amazing experience, and just opens up a whole new world, you know.
Well, it did for you, I would
Mhm.
I would say, right? So maybe maybe you could discuss a little bit about, first off, your background and your understanding of extraterrestrial life prior to the COVID period of actually making an encounter or seeing things. But in terms of your own personal background, what was your belief system prior to that, and where did you think about these types of subjects?
Well, I've always been drawn to the stars and space. I grew up watching space documentaries, and I've always been open to it. And I always had a gut feeling that there was something else out there. But with the extraterrestrials and UFOs, I was very much a clean slate, for the most part, because I wasn't a huge UFO advocate. I didn't know much about it. I just knew, okay, yeah, I could believe that there's something else going on out there,
Right.
but I never dug into it. So I was very much a clean slate, but I was open to it. And, I had that feeling. I would say I was a little spiritual, but not really. I had, an awakening a few years prior, and it's a big inner journey, and kind of felt a little more of a connection with the universe, but I wasn't too spiritual really, and I wasn't too much into UFOs. Before this, I was a nutritionist, and I taught nutrition and health classes, and that was, I really wanted to help people that way, and I did. I helped thousands and thousands of people, through teaching this, and I was very much a holistic health and wellness type person.
Right.
But that was kind of the extent of it. So the astrophotography and UFOs were very new to me.
Yeah. It's almost, yeah, I just finished teaching physical education and teaching health as well. So for me, in terms of staying on, I guess, on rooted in what's grounded in this plane, didn't fulfill my soul in terms of being encompassed or being, smothered by just information. I wanted to explore myself as well. So I think there's always that traumatic experience or some type of trauma that a person goes through that kind of expands the person's consciousness and busts someone out of the bubble if they're willing to take the journey. So um, I think from your perspective, and I know many other people's perspectives, is that people get afraid of what lies beyond their vision or what things they can't see. And we become compounded into just following certain rules and regulations of thinking what we're supposed to believe. But you're an example, obviously, of things that you've experienced and seen and photographed that that are evidence of what you're speaking about. So I know I heard in another interview that you saw, I guess, a ship flying by your house or
Yeah,
something to that
yeah.
effect.
Yeah, so this was just a normal night. And before this, I should add that I was very much into not just like health and wellness, but I was also looking into the science of consciousness. I had a fascination with how the mind works, and just how these other things affect us and how they're all connected. So that was kind of my doorway, my ticket into crossing the bridge into the UFO world.
Right.
But so it was just a random night. I stepped out on my front porch, and this is about a couple months after doing astrophotography. And I was supposed to be going on an astro trip the next night. It was the middle of the night. I stepped out on my porch, looked up to the stars, and I immediately locked eyes with this hovering light that seemed to be hovering over a little bit in the distance above the neighborhood. And it was hovering in that cliche UFO type of way. I ruled out, okay, what is that? It's not a planet. It's not a plane. I think that's something weird.
Right. Right.
So yeah, and that was my first time seeing one. I pulled out my phone to begin recording it. And then this orange light appeared at the end of my street that caught my attention. And I looked over, and it was dead quiet. This was last winter. And then I hear the wind pick up, like something was coming towards me. I looked back over, and a second craft had appeared, and I was bending my neck looking up at it. It was probably only a few houses down, and it was a large diamond, triangular craft, some weird shape I'd never seen before. It went up, down, side to side to show me its moves, and then began coming straight towards me. And that's when I realized, okay, this is real, and it's coming right for me. And it ended up disappearing right above my head.
Yeah, I've had interesting conversations with people throughout the years, and usually the people that they'll all of a sudden we'll get into a deep conversation unless I never told anybody this, or I never told anybody this, and then they would share this information with me. Some guy in his 80s, when he was younger and in the 30s, he remembers working and seeing a disc land in front of him and then take off. And then I had a friend that said the same thing, but it's almost as if it's almost like a numbing effect on some people where they block it out and it becomes almost traumatic for them to not be able to allow it to get into their consciousness. But there are people like yourself, myself, and others who I've interviewed and spoken to who've written numerous books on the subject and have expressed, their personal experiences. For example, I interviewed a woman named Angela Thompson Smith, who's a remote viewer, and she wrote a book of Voices from the Cosmos, where she interviewed different alien races and passed on the information to her. And she was hired by a millionaire broker from Wall Street who was interested in the subject. So she spoke about the exact interests of what their goal was, what they wanted to accomplish, or what what they didn't want to do as it related to us. So your story of seeing that is exactly in line of what other people who've written all these books and have shared the information are about. The interesting part for me is how during COVID, how does a person actually make contact?
Mm-hmm. So this was something that progressed over, it took me probably a couple months of seeing them at first. So my first sighting, that close encounter happened, and it felt very intentional, very personal. It was coming straight for me. It disappeared right above my house. And I feel like they gave me a little bit of time to soak that in. A couple weeks went by, and then I had another close encounter where I spent the night at an astronomy park. I was up there by myself out shooting astrophotography. Suddenly there are 5 different UFOs in every direction, and they were just hovering and kind of sitting there all night. And I recorded them and got some cool footage of them. But after that, then I saw about 14 different UFOs in the matter of 2 weeks. And it was very personal, it's like they were trying to jump in front of my camera. They were trying to tell me something. And everywhere I turned, there was a UFO.
Wow.
So yeah, it got intense pretty quick. So then I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is what I'm supposed to be doing now. Obviously, they're trying to tell me something. So I just dove right into learning everything I could about them, investigating them, trying to catch them on camera and sharing this with others, because it's a huge paradigm shift. Like we're actually not alone. And I really wanted to capture that evidence and document those experiences to learn more about these other beings. And after I'd say a couple months or so of that, then I felt like I was beginning to develop a relationship with them. And the night that I realized I could initiate contact, I went and tested it out. Instead of them just popping up, randomly, because I'd always be like, are they going to pop up? And then as soon as I forget about them, they'd be right there popping up. But so I went out and I tried it. I was going to make contact with them. I set the intention out, and I had another person with me too. Within 5 minutes of getting out of the car, a golden orb appeared, and it started jumping around. And I was trying to ask it questions before I'd really developed like a telepathic communication with them. I had hints and feelings, but I wasn't 100% sure. And this golden orb engaged with us, moved around with us for about 15 minutes. My friend suggested that we close our eyes to see if we could get anything that way. And when I did, this golden orb sent me a vision of a woman with light blue skin. She was laying down on a table and she had no hair. She was very beautiful, very human-like, except light blue skin. And she had a silver gray uniform on, like a space uniform, like cliche Star Trek type of uniform.
Right.
and then there were 5 crew members standing behind her around this table. And I believe that she was the one who was manning this orb, like projecting it through her consciousness and using this orb, whatever this technology was, to communicate with me. And she also showed me a vision of like this light coming down in through the top of the head. And that's when I realized what a download was. She was like sending me a telepathic image, and it was a download, just a download packet of information. And so that's when I realized I could make contact with them. And then it was all over from there. I was making contact like every day.
Yeah, yeah. It seems very special. Because I have friends also who make videos, and in the background at times when they talk about certain subjects, a light will come out of the cloud and hover around, not with
Wow.
any shape, but light itself. And I myself was on the beach last year, and it's interesting how we go through life sometimes where people have their head down on the ground and they said, I never saw that, I never saw that. But sometimes it's interesting if we just pick our head up into the sky and to see not only what we're talking about, but even birds or whatever that are around us. And I was at the beach, and I'm interested in this subject myself, and I'm trying myself to actually make contact telepathically. I don't go long enough maybe into it. But sure enough, last summer I was on the beach, and a disc flew right, was hovering near, I guess near me. It was not near me. It looked almost like a balloon, a silver balloon that was a drone, a drone balloon, and all of a sudden it just faded up into the clouds.
Wow.
And so
They
when
were
I
saying hello to you.
Yeah, yes. I felt that, and I said to myself, it's interesting because nobody else saw it. Like when I spoke to the lifeguards, an older gentleman who said, I believe in all that. I said, and incidentally, about a few weeks ago, I was here and something passed by. He goes, what do you mean passed by? And I described to him what I just said to you. So the interesting thing is why are certain people contacted, and others not?
That's a
What?
good question. So in what I've noticed with this, so it's some people's turn to wake up and some people it's not their turn yet, what I gather. And you also have to be of a certain, you have to have an open mind. You have to be of a certain frequency, I believe. Like I would be out with astrophotography buddies and I would see something zip past and I'm like, did you not just see that?
Right, right.
They never saw it. Ironically, it was always just me who saw it until until things progressed. But I believe that they show themselves very deliberately to who they want to see, them. And also I believe it has to do with frequency and being open-minded. They won't show up if you're afraid or if you are closed-minded or judgmental. They just won't mess with you. And also, I believe that, and especially through I began doing Star Origins readings on people to help them connect with their cosmic family. If they've seen UFOs before, oftentimes it is somebody that maybe you don't remember this lifetime, but it's a being that you are connected with in some way. So I
Yeah.
believe that's why a lot of people, they'll see these because it's somebody who is connected with them trying to drop some hints to wake them up.
Yeah, I think when we go through life and we face with traumas, I think those are also the wake up calls of opening up our soul to everything that exists in the universe. And I think it's no different for this being the next phase of maybe trauma that you deal with and you expand upon rather than constrict. And I know for myself, I've met people who have contacted me and has said to me, I remember you from Sirius. And
Wow.
and I do Akashic record readings, so it's interesting. I did a reading for myself because I was unaware of that was the beginning of me understanding that I was a little fear, but also interest. So when I did the reading, I heard the blue planet, and I didn't know what the blue planet was. So I looked it up in Wikipedia, and the blue planet was Sirius.
Wow.
So it was very interesting for me to have not only the reading reveal that information, but also to have contact with someone who recognized me and said, told me the information, or at least the information that I thought was relevant.
Wow, that's amazing.
But
Yeah.
based upon your knowledge and your insight, um, maybe you could just explain to the audience what a star seed is,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
then explain maybe what you see in terms of how do you recognize someone from a certain place, or do you hear it? Are you told? What do you see?
Mhm. Yeah. So a starseed is somebody who has lived lifetimes on other planets, other realms, other galaxies, and often they will feel a calling to the stars, or just a calling that, starseeds are here to help create a new reality. They may have a vision of a better future, or they may be creative. Often they're very intuitive. Often they're sensitive to other energy, and that can cause depression and anxiety. And often they incarnate in rough, scenarios where they go through a lot of trauma, because like you said, that helps wake you up and helps you grow and develop spiritually. So sometimes they may have a tough life, or have to go through some, pretty big battles. And, they may be creative. Um, and so the different how I know, I can kind of just sense it with people. If they have an old soul, you've probably been told that before. You have an old soul.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, I feel like all star seeds they've probably been told before, you have an old soul.
Yeah. Well, I was not educating my parents, but raised in a home where it was my responsibility to awaken, and the frustration that built within me was great. And so yes, I was used to stay around older people, my grandparents, their friends. My friends were too young for me, even though we were on the same age. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's a definite. So in terms of hearing where a person's from, like a planet.
Mhm. So what I would do, and I began testing this out and playing with this, because as I began developing this communication and this relationship with the star beings, then I realized I was really introduced to meditation. And once I had that first vision, I was like, I want more. And I knew that was the direction I was supposed to go. They would leave me hints with the third eye, develop your third eye. So I began meditating, and now I receive visions, and they show me a lot of information that way. And sometimes it's a feeling, sometimes it's like a combination of imagery, feeling, thought. Sometimes I do hear word, not as often, but so I began playing around with it as I was developing these extrasensory skills. I began playing around with it and testing it. Like, I want to be able to look at a person and tell where they're from. And now I can kind of pick up on that energy of a person. And but really I like to go into meditation, like for my star origins readings. I like to go into meditation and see what imagery pops up. Um, and sometimes they can be a combination of different star systems. But so essentially it's a combination of feeling out their energy, and meditating and receiving visions on it.
And what does that do for the person who receives the information? Does it help them connect to a part of themselves that they're not aware of, that enhances their life, or does it make them, I guess, become in touch with their sensitivities that they sometimes would judge as opposed to live with and honor? Maybe you could elaborate on.
Yeah, certainly. So I believe that these sessions, and just discovering your star origins, it's an activation. It begins to trigger an activation within you, and then you can begin developing these gifts, and then suddenly everything makes sense. This is why I was like that growing up, or this is why that happened to me. This is why I feel so called to this. It just Pieces of the puzzle begin coming together, and often people will feel very empowered, and it brings, yeah, a whole new level of confidence and understanding. And it also begins to activate something within them, and more information and more pieces of the puzzle begin coming, and they can also begin to develop these skills. And often what I'm seeing, and I went through it too, but a lot of star seeds, they have issues with energetic boundaries where they can feel the collective so much, or they can feel other people's energy so much, it gives them anxiety and just gets them down, bogged up, depressed. So I really like to also stress it, you have wonderful gifts, and you can develop them, but you also need to cleanse and protect your energy so that you can develop these gifts and in a healthy and balanced way.
All right, I can take a little bit, like 10 minutes, and then I got to get away.
Mm-hmm.
Or I had to do something to be by myself. And it was looked upon as, I guess,
Weird.
if I judged myself as weird, yeah, I felt weird. Like people in high school I'm with now, my girlfriend, she was in high school with me at the time, and she said, "Oh, you were this, you were that." I said, "Yeah, but you don't know what I felt. You had no clue of what I was feeling as a person. Everybody was social and they were on a different plane." But I assume you have these sensitivities as well to some degree, or
Yeah, I definitely am. I can be a combination of introvert, extrovert. My batteries need to be recharged, and I do like spending time alone, and also becoming overwhelmed with just crowds of people and social interactions. I can take it in small doses, and grew up feeling the outcast, the black sheep. Um, and definitely now, as I discovered that I was a star seed, and there were reasons for this, it made me feel a lot better. Like, okay, I do belong. I'm just from a different place, and I'm here to create something new. It doesn't mean that there wasn't anything wrong with me, nothing to, beat myself up over.
yeah. So how would you explain to somebody who asks the question, like, are everybody from a different planet?
Hmm. So I believe that we 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 could have been it seems like we've been genetically created, and with a combination of different DNA. But so I think that we are all star seeds in that way. Maybe with a combination of different, DNA from other star systems to create the perfect, new human being.
Right, right, right.
Um, yeah, and there's a lot of untapped potential within us too. And that's one of the main reasons why I really focus in the star beings drilled in my head. Activate your DNA. There's so much hidden potential in our DNA. Scientists say 95% of it is junk DNA, and we know that's not the case. So I believe we're all star seeds in that way. But I believe some of our souls, like me and you and old souls, we have lived more lives on other, planets and star systems. So we really carry that vibe, that
Yes,
frequency
yes.
in those those memories and stuff with us.
The interesting thing is the work that you do in terms of actually meditating and actually calling upon the energy and the contact. And so maybe you can just share, like, in terms of when you create the vision or the contact, how long does it usually generate or take? How long does it take for you to actually draw a connection where it's
Mhm.
strong enough for you to get information? And is it through hearing, seeing, feeling, or a combination of both? And what do you listen to a meditation? I know you created your own meditations. I've listened to them myself, actually. I did it one time. I didn't do it long enough to actually make any type of contact, but I'm definitely interested in doing it. So
Yeah,
why
and I
don't you?
believe that begins to the techniques with the visualizing the connection with them, and just saying it first, like, asking, setting that intention is so powerful, and that begins to draw the bridge. My story was a little different because UFOs just began bombarding me. But for people who are like wanting to make contact, setting that intention and I'd spend at least like 10 minutes looking up, and, send out that invitation that you're going to make peaceful contact. For me, um, while connecting with them, it could be 10 to 15 minutes. Sometimes it may take longer for me to connect with them. Sometimes it's not long at all, because I feel like I check in with them often. I talk with them a lot. So even if it's just, that's just me taking a moment to say something to them and kind of telepathically send a message to them. But during meditation, I'd say maybe like 10-15 minutes. But then sometimes, like, it's like dialing a phone and then like they don't pick up sometimes. So I don't know if they're busy, or I may connect with a different type of being. Yeah, but what I found with making contact, it really helps to create a routine after you set that intention and ask to connect with them. It helps knowing your star origins and beginning to learn more about this, because then you have somebody to connect with. Like, okay, I want to connect with my Pleiadian star family. I want to connect with my Sirian star family. That helps narrow down, and you probably already, especially if you've seen a UFO before, you probably already have some star family that's looking after you and is aware that you're here. Creating a routine helps. Like, okay, I'm going to meditate every morning, or I'm going to go outside and sky watch for 10 minutes before bed each night. And I'd say if you keep up with that, you should definitely see something or feel something.
Okay, so for example, you yourself belong to which star seed, and when you say it, you mention to call upon the star seed itself or the family.
Yeah, so we all have a star family. All the star seeds we all have, or those who feel a connection, and you've had many Syrian lives. And for me, so that's just that. I think that makes logical sense. Who was contacting me at first? It was my Lyran star family, and it took me months and months to figure this out. I actually had to go see a psychic, and because I was trying to figure out who are these UFOs.
What did
I
they look
didn't.
like? What color? Any dress specifically, or just you describe?
Uh, so this was the blue woman that I described. That was the first one that I saw with the golden orb that I made contact with, and then I realized, okay, these are some of the beings that have been making contact with me. And she was from Lyran genetics, the light blue skin, no hair, very human looking, very beautiful, and the silver skin tight spacesuit. And then I saw another psychic who said that I was Pleiadian, and Pleiadians are visiting me. I later found that I had Lyrans, Pleiadians, and Syrians who were visiting me. So I have those three: Lyran, Pleiadian, and Syrian
Interesting,
origins.
interesting. I guess I don't know if you see Syrian in me, or that's what you mentioned before.
Yeah,
But
I could see it. I could see it.
yeah, it's what's the interesting concept is that people forget about the fact that we as human beings go to the moon, or we explore space, and we forget the concept that things reciprocate in life as well. That just because we're the only ones we think that are here are doing it, that doesn't mean that other people are not reciprocating and coming here to do the same thing or have the technology. But in fact, we know through history, through historical, writings and through visualizations that people have made contact, and the fact that it exists shows the connection that takes place in this universe. I know that I guess for religious reasons, a lot of theologians are obviously against the fact of revealing information that would contradict what the church has taught and has brought to be. Although I've heard recently that they're preparing information. I mean, you hear all the time in June that this was going to be revealed or released. I think the fact is that once we in ourselves know within ourselves what we believe, rather than trying to be validated from the media or from external forces, then we know. The only thing is, I think it becomes lonely when you don't have someone to share this information with at the instant it takes place. So when you saw those ships, who was the first person you contacted, or what did you feel? Who did you want to tell?
Yeah, I had a fellow astrophotographer I was really close with. I immediately began texting him, and he's like, "Oh, you're just looking at Mars," or like he had every excuse in the book, and my family did too. Oh, it was a drone. Nobody believed me for months and months, and then finally I began capturing, it was left and right, and I began recording them. And so it was very, very lonely at first, but then when it picked up, I began creating content on it though, because I was like, I need to show the world this. And I was amazed by how many people were interested in it and had seen these things before, and flocked flocked together and began building a community, because there's so many others out there and they don't have people to tell often. So at first it was very lonely. Then I began creating content and realizing just how many people are experiencing these things and seeing these things too. So I think community and coming together is going to be a really, really important, it's definitely a very important piece of it. And more people are realizing this, and discovering these things for themselves. So
Yeah, I think you're one of the perfect channels due to the fact that you have the insight, your background from where you originate from, and also the fact that you're doing the photography and having the ability to speak on these interviews with people and being able to share your wisdom and insight, which motivates people to also feel like they're supported and they're able to express themselves. Maybe there should be like a UFO support group where
yeah,
people,
there really should be. Yeah,
yeah, so many
I want
people.
to create some sort of a community group, something where people
Yeah,
can meet our seeds and other, UFO enthusiasts and stuff like that.
yeah, it's interesting. I find that there's a balance between obviously having our feet on the ground and having our head in the clouds.
Mhm.
And I think obviously it runs line in perfect with our chakra system, right? If we able to bring the energy from the base to the crown and beyond, we're able to make that connection. So many of us get stuck in a rooted system of materialism and feeling that we have to hold on tight with our feet in the ground, and we never have that chance. But I think the opportunity for a person to actually just look up in the sky and explore what exists and what's there is the
Mhm.
first step in maybe making contact. Because the
Yeah.
last thing on that particular illustration, I remember in 1987, I was in Germany and I was walking in the street at night, and I think you heard the expression a shooting star as something that just moves across the universe or in the sky.
Mhm.
And I just remember seeing like a white disc or something go right across, and it just looked like how far it might have not even been that far away, but I saw it, and then I just went in my own little world, and I said to myself, "What is that?" But you heard shooting star, just like you heard like anything was trick photography on television was just made up. So
Mhm.
I think I think the information that you're presenting is insightful, and it gives people the confidence to come forward and speak about it. And specifically the fact that you're able to create those meditations, which I myself will practice, and I'll share that as well in the at the bottom of the interview. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, sure. Is there anything else you'd like to share on the subject,
Mm,
or any wisdom you want to put forth in these times that you
yeah.
received?
Yeah. So if you feel a calling, there is something in there. There's just so much untapped within us. And so many, this has been an incredible healing journey, an explorative journey for me. Even like having memories of other lives and it bringing up trauma and blocks that I needed to work through. Suddenly it was like a weight lifted off my shoulder. And there could be things affecting you from previous lifetimes. It goes really deep. And so it's just been a very incredible healing, enlightening journey. And with making contact, your cosmic family, that's what they're here for. They're here to help us evolve, and they're here to support us. We just have to, they may have initiated contact with you before, just like that flying disc that you saw. That was them dropping a little hint saying hello to you. Now it's our turn to, step up, and while still being grounded and, on the earth and taking care of earth business, but, getting firmly grounded, firmly rooted, and then reaching out and asking for their help, for their guidance and assistance. And yeah, it's been an incredible journey. They're here to help us. And I want everybody, anybody can do this if you have an open mind, pure intention, and just make sure that you are in uh, a positive, space whenever you're reaching out to connect with them, because the universe projects back to what you send out. So
Right.
they really connect through love and peace and bliss. So emanating that feeling in that state, and then projecting that out to them, sending them love, can help draw that connection.
Well, I wanted to thank you very much for sharing this information. It was short but concise and to the point of what we needed to hear. And I think that, as I said, your work is inspiring for people who've had these feelings and have had this inclination of knowing there's more to it than just what meets the eye, and there's more to it than just on this planet Earth, and that we're just one big cosmos interacting with one another, whether you can see it or not. So I'd like to thank you for sharing this time and this information with us and your experiences.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. I'm so glad that this information is getting out there and people are coming together. That's what they told me recently, when I started doing these interviews. You just needed to come together. You just need to come together, and things are going to take off very quickly. So coming together and sharing this information, making those connections, is just, there's going to be a lot of transformation over the next couple of years, few years for sure. So it's
We'll,
exciting times.
yeah, we'll talk about that in another time, definitely. So I want to
Mhm.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.